Pleased to be joined now by the mighty Garry Tonon. Massive co-main event coming up for you at the Big Bang in Singapore. One championship, Koyomi Matsushima. What an interesting challenge this is. Number 2 versus number 5 in the division. I'm looking forward to this. How good does it feel to finally be getting back to it?
Oh man, it feels great. A lot of anxiety, going into this, a lot of fear. Don't get me wrong. As excited as I am to go back in there and fight, like the longer you wait, the little more anxious you get. It's like anything like that kind of gets postponed, anything that you kind of hold off on, anything that, you haven't done in a while, you get a little bit shaky, because a big part of what eases anxiety and what adds to comfortability is repetition. Doing that thing over and over and over again. That's what leads you to become, and not just doing it over and over again, but doing it successfully over and over again makes you feel more confident, makes you feel more calm, makes you feel more comfortable. So because I've been out of there for so long, I'm a little antsy, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, this is what I want. I want to be taking fights, as often as possible. So I'm glad that that's possible again. I know that this is going to be an interesting challenge because, there's going to be quarantine procedures and stuff. I've already had to do a lot of additional testing that I would have normally have to do leading up to a fight. And there's going to be a lot of differences. But that said, I'm preparing for the challenges to the best of my ability. And, I'm, again, just super happy that we're able to fight again and that we're able to get this back going. Very happy that one is giving me this opportunity.
As fights started to come back, we started to see the likes of Ong Lan Sang come over from the States, Christian Lee. And a few of us were asking, where's Garry Tonon? How difficult was this to get over the line? How much behind the scenes has there been to put this together and to get you back in the mixer? And how much time did you spend going, where am I? When am I going to be back in there?
Yeah. So it was tricky, man. I think for the longest time, the toughest thing for them was like, Singapore is very strict, in their border policies, and it's worked out really well for them in terms of like the amount of the diseases spread and stuff hasn't been as much as some other places. So hard to say that it wasn't a good move for them, but one and the same, it made it very difficult for One Championship, I think, to host their events. And especially with people like us that are out in the States and stuff, the UFC was able to start hosting events relatively early because they were able to do something in Abu Dhabi. For one, it's difficult because they were in a country where I don't think it was possible for them to leave. So everybody that's in the organization's in Singapore for the most part. And I don't think they would have been able to leave. And even if they could find a way to leave, they probably would have been able to come back. So it's a pretty tricky challenge, to be in that sort of situation. So I think they threw on some kicks and cards at first, and then they slowly started to get their way back into the MMA scene, which is great. But yeah, there's been hurdles and hoops to have to jump through. And there's been times when I thought I was going to fight where I didn't. Like right before COVID happened, I was the last card. I think I was the first card that they nixed. I was ready to be back on schedule. And then I think that's when everything finally shut down. I think they were running a couple shows like in-house with no audience, but then it got to a point where nope, we're not flying anybody in, anybody out, and they completely locked down. Right. So I was on the list. I was getting in there, but things just didn't end up working out. And they even pushed the event that I was supposed to be on back, or I guess they at least pushed my fight back. I was supposed to fight December 20th or September. I was supposed to fight November 20th initially, and they pushed it back to December 4th not too long ago, midway through fight camp or towards the end of fight camp. They told me, hey, you got to wait 2 weeks. You're not fighting. I don't really know what the reasoning was for that. They didn't really explain it to me. But regardless, it was just another hurdle. It's kind of confusing, leading up mentally. You're kind of like anticipating this event to be on a particular day. And, like I said, cage fighting is an anxiety producing thing. And, to have it all of a sudden, hey, I'm leaving in a couple days to go somewhere, and then be like, yeah, you can relax. It's 2 weeks. It's like, you're playing with my emotions. This is a roller coaster here, So I kind of had to reset, recalibrate, and get back to it. But, I'm feeling ready, and, I'm excited to get back out there.
How long has it been Matsushima for? How long? I've heard whispers of this for a long time now. Has he always been the guy?
No. So the initial fight, I believe, when they first told me about it, was supposed to be, I'm losing track here for a minute. Because I was announcing a couple things, just giving some teasers, I think on Twitter, that the opponent was 12-0 maybe, I
I
think.
remember that. Yeah, yeah. And
So
I was going
yeah,
through the whole roster and I couldn't figure it out.
yeah. So, well, that's the thing. It was a newer guy that they had just signed, I think. He was actually who I was supposed to fight before the whole COVID thing had happened. I don't know why I'm not remembering his name now. He's from Kyrgyzstan, maybe. If that helps, I'm not really 100% sure. If I think of it, I'll mention it to you guys. But anyway, super tough fighter. That was gonna be a really tough fight. It's not that this next fight's not either, but it would have been presented an interesting challenge because he had some really good takedown defense and some interesting striking. That guy, but yeah, man, things switched up. I guess I think what happened was his country wasn't allowing him to leave. I'm pretty sure. I think, another COVID related thing. So, it is what it is. I'm sorry. I feel bad, for him to not be able to do it because I'm guessing he wants to fight because clearly twice we've been signed now and it didn't work out. So that's a shame for him. It's a missed opportunity, but I'm happy to get back out there for me, obviously.
How much are you relishing the fact that this is the number 2 guy? He's got massive pedigree in Shuto. He is legit as they come. And I feel like, your challenges have continued to go like that. I think you transitioning to MMA, it's always interesting to see someone who's a master of one discipline come into MMA, but you've got 100% finishing rate since you come to MMA. So that's pretty nice, right? But now there is no disputing that Matsushima is very, very high level. How much does that intrigue you as a competitor?
Yeah, it intrigues me a lot. I'm very excited. He actually fought for the title once. So, think that right there, it just, speaks volumes about how tough of an opponent he is. And in that title fight, like he did very well. He presented a lot of challenges for Martin Nguyen, and Martin is a very resilient fighter and solves a lot of difficult problems in the cage. And I'm always impressed with the work that he does. And he was able to solve that puzzle and find a way to put a stop to him. But nonetheless, clearly another step up in terms of challenges. And one of the things that I think that he presents, one of the things I think he presents a little bit, Matsushima, that some other opponents maybe haven't, is a little bit of a wrestling pedigree, I would say. I'm not really sure what his actual, accolades might be in the wrestling area, but I can just tell based off of his fights that it's something that he's very comfortable with and very successful with. So that often is a little bit of a tricky thing with a jiu-jitsu guy. Sometimes it can go either direction. I often believe that with a submission-based fighter like myself, that it's a great counter to, a tough wrestler personally. But I do know that there's a lot of jiu-jitsu guys out there. For example, I think Yuri Samoas just fought recently a guy that had a little bit of a wrestling background, and it was a tough fight for him. So I know that presents some interesting challenges for jiu-jitsu guys, especially in the regard that hey, in order for us to do all this jiu-jitsu that we love to do, like this, leg breaking and strangling, we have to be able to get somebody to the ground for the most part. Right. So if we can't do that, if you're posing enough of a threat, or you're able to stop our takedowns, man, that's a really frustrating thing. You see a lot of really polished fighters that are really good with that. When they're frustrated by the fact that they can't take someone down, it really changes the dynamic of the fight. And you see guys that have succeeded at high levels before, all of a sudden they almost crumble in there. So it's a scary thing, to be presented with a challenge like that. I personally think he'll try to use most of his wrestling as more of a counter style as opposed to offensively using his wrestling. But we'll see, man. You never know. People say a lot of things. I've heard he's going to try to knock me out before I get a chance to touch him. I've heard things like that when the broadcast crew came to do interviews with me. Who knows? I have no idea whether that's just words or whether that's actually what his plan is. I personally believe, by watching his fights and how often he engages in wrestling exchanges, that at some point he's going to do it. I think it's hard for him not to use that skill because it is something that he uses quite often. He's got other skills though. So, it's not like it's going to be an easy stand-up battle either.
From an onlooker's perspective, I've been so impressed with your striking. It's really fun to watch as well. How pleased have you been with your striking? And, it's been since March 2018 now that you've been competing professionally in MMA. Do you feel like an MMA fighter? Do you feel like not the new kid anymore? Do you feel like you're a jiu-jitsu guy who's doing MMA? Do you identify now as someone who lives and breathes MMA as well? And does it feel like natural to you now?
I'm definitely getting there, man. I see what you're saying, from a perspective of at first, kind of being you know, feeling like, hey man, like I have this jiu-jitsu stuff and like I'm trying to prepare for the other parts of MMA, but like really how we're going to win this fight is the jiu-jitsu stuff, right? But I tried to make it a point, you know, in my first few fights to like really test the waters a little bit, get my feet wet with the striking and get a little bit more comfortable out there. And yeah, man, I do feel much more like an actual mixed martial artist than just like a jiu-jitsu guy who's getting into a cage and hoping to use some jiu-jitsu. You know, at the same time, like you said, you know, long layoff, it's tricky, man. You know, I've been sparring, I've been doing my thing, I've been training every day. But you know, there's something special about actually getting out in that cage with those tiny gloves and going at it. So it'll be good to get that feeling back again, and hopefully, you know, be able to build relatively quickly, you know, onto a next fight so that I don't have to be in this, you know, ether stage where I have to worry about like, oh man, like, yeah, I feel like my skills are very good, but it's been, you know, a year and a half since I've been in the cage, you know, because I think I'll probably perform best when this is something that I'm always doing consistently. So.
Well, I mentioned this number 5 versus number 2, you know, win here. You've got to be busy again pretty soon, right? That puts you right up there. How interested were you to watch the Martin versus Tan Lee fight? I mean, Tan Lee seems like he's got a real X factor about him. People like him. He's fun to watch. And now he's got the belt. It's crazy to think that, because I feel like Martin's had it for a very long time now.
Yeah, so that's pretty much what I predicted would happen, and I don't mean that from like I told you so perspective, but like I did kind of see that coming. One and the same though. I've said this a number of times in a number of different interviews. Like Martin impresses me so often. Like I've watched almost all of his fights, and he comes up against some really serious challenges with different skills, whether it be really tough wrestlers or, you know, a really tough striker, whatever the case may be. And he finds ways to solve these puzzles from a mixed martial arts perspective that always impresses me. Yes, he's always got that, you know, that overhand, and that's like his main skill, but like, you know, to state that like that's all he's got would be a big understatement, I think. So he has like all these other integral skills that he's able to use to solve these puzzles and figure out how to beat these guys. So I was never counting him out. You know, even though I did think Thon was going to win, just because I believe from a stand-up perspective, he was going to be a little bit sharper than Martin, and that's Martin's greatest skill is that overhand. I still didn't count Martin out. I really think that he has a fighting chance in any fight, including a fight with me, because just like you said, he's been such a dominant force in that division for so long. So yeah, in a sense, I guess like for the average fan, or, you know, even for me in some sense, like, yeah, it's a little surprising because he's just been there for a long time and even had multiple belts and things like that. But from the perspective of looking at the two and like seeing their different skills, like I kind of saw that Thon could edge him out in standing contests, you know. But at the same time, watching that fight, it was very back and forth. You know, I think there was a lot of really significant damage that Martin was able to do. He was able to stumble Thon. He was able to put him on his back foot, able to make him not work as much, you know, be more on the defensive. I think it was a really interesting fight and a really tough fight. I think it spoke volumes about the different vulnerabilities that each of those athletes have, which I'll hopefully be able to use to my advantage when I fight either of them.